Okay, so this is your lovely EAL team. So myself, Kimberly Goosen, we have Dina Alexander, Carrie Tusanat, Rebecca Hartwick, Stacy Itterman, and Aurelia Aoli. So you will notice we do have our divisional expertise. So if you are a teacher, for example, in K-3, I'm happy to support, as well as we do have our school that we support. We have our 25 schools that we support. We have our lovely leaders. We have Sonia Stapleton, who is our supervisor, and Holly Sheely, who is our director. So we're gathering here today. We are going to be learning and growing our knowledge of how to best support the success of our students as we really reflect upon how our literacy and numeracy classes and how we can best support our EAL students. So that focus on really making sure that all our students are successful, especially our EAL students. And again, the fact that you are here on this beautiful afternoon really speaks to your professional growth. And so we're so appreciative that you are here to continue to grow and refine our teaching techniques. So today, our session targets, we're really going to be looking as an overarching theme of supporting benchmarks in your literacy and numeracy classrooms. And we're going to be looking first at using wordless picture books. And then Rebecca is going to sign us off and look at language acquisition in your math class. So like I said, I'm going to get started with how you can use wordless picture books in your classroom to support those benchmarks. So wordless picture books, if anybody knows who I am a picture book freak. I just love them. I collect them. It's really not a good thing. I have so many, I don't know where to put them. But they really benefit all learners at any age, but they are particularly crucial in aiding our EAL students with bridging that language, developing vocabulary, and supporting academic standards and global standards. You'll see that the layers of meaning that the books accommodate can be particularly powerful, which really is something that as our EAL consultants, we really want to keep that rigor high for our EAL students. And I'm going to show you some ways that you can kind of remove those barriers. But wordless picture books have kind of already done that by taking away that text. So why wordless picture books? So they are accessible in any language. They are more easily processed. So students are able to make meaning from the pictures rather than the text. And a lot of times this can feel less overwhelming or daunting. They feel like they can be successful. It obviously allows for a lot of oral speaking as you go through the picture book. As well, you'll see that we can incorporate a lot of that written storytelling as well. One thing I really love is that it encourages the freedom of interpretation. So we're not restricted to what the text says, and students can really make meaning and take ownership over the interpretation of their books. They can focus on details and visual elements and learn from their own experiences that they bring into their inferences in a text matter. So what they have as their experience, they can bring and they actually get validated with that. And that their voices and their stories matter. It also promotes creative innovation. The text isn't there to tell the story, they're there to tell the story. So we're removing, again, those barriers, but we're not lowering the bar because we're really encouraging students to have those critical thinking skills and think outside of the box and come up with their own meanings. And finally, as we go through, we're going to be talking about how it supports that listening, speaking, reading, writing, and thinking. So again, I really want to show that when we're using wordless picture books, we can target our curriculum, but we can also target our benchmarks with our listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So one way that you can read a wordless picture book, and of course this isn't the end all and be all, but just something you might want to try, is going through these kind of 6 steps. So you could begin with exploring the cover. Then you could start to access the prior knowledge. You could model the sequencing, you could do an analysis, you could do kind of a self-talk or reflection about the wordless picture book. You can identify plot elements, you could summarize a narrative, and you can also respond personally. So I'm going to take you through like a little example here. So let's say, migrants, this is actually a wordless picture book that is in our IMC if you are interested in signing it out. But as you explore the front cover, maybe you start with just hiding the title to see if the students could come up with a title for the story by just looking at those visuals. You might want to begin by asking some questions, right, about the characters. Point out some of those nouns, maybe some of those descriptive language. You might want to, once you do show the title, ask them, what is an example of a time you had to make a move? So they're then creating that personal connection. You can begin to make predictions and provide those sentence frames like, I think that in the book, this book might be about. You can begin to build background knowledge. So maybe you look at news articles or you look at news videos about migrants and what does that word even mean and what does that look like? Um, Again, building the vocabulary. So maybe you're pointing out the characters and what do you notice about the characters? What are those different animals? What are they wearing? The descriptive language. So one of the ways that we love to do is the PWIM method, so the picture word inductive method. And so what you would do is you could have a picture of, for example, the front cover, and then they could actually label with the vocabulary. And so this is so great for scaffolding for all of our EAL students because anybody can access this. They could do it in their home language. They could label the descriptive language that they might know, the nouns, the verbs. So really can access it to where they are at. And so it's really a strength-based approach. So they'll start with labeling what they see. They might predict what they hear or how the characters are feeling. And again, that home language should be encouraged so that they can aid in making those connections between. And then again, allows for those multiple points of access. So every EAL student can really access this piece. Then when you take it from the PWIM, then you start thinking about kind of that next step where we're starting to build sentences from those vocabulary words. So you might start off with some sentence frames on the side so that they can get into some simple pattern sentences, which again also helps to build upon their vocabulary. Through conversation with the students' responses, teachers are able to expand the student's vocabulary. A student may begin with a sentence such as, the birds are at the back, and the teachers can add that these birds are called exotic birds because they are not birds found naturally in Canada. If a student responds that the animals are walking in a group, teachers can add that a group of animals can be called a pack. So really, this is a great opportunity as well to target and teach cohesive devices. The sentence frames should be modeled and practiced by all and should begin again with that oral piece first, so speaking, before there is anything used in writing. And for those level 5, and again, our other students in our classroom, you can expand this into themes and sort into paragraphs, as well as academically complex detailed sentences. This allows for your groups to be arranged by ability, language proficiency, and of course, mixed groups. So once you've kind of started that process of looking at the front cover, then we're going to start with our first reading. And so I want you to think of these 5 different elements. You want to model, so model self-talk and questioning. You want to identify any of the images and characters. You want to discuss the action, which is going to add to their verbs. You want to highlight theme, imagery, and tone, which is going to add to the adjectives and adverbs. And then finally, you get to build that vocabulary, that academic, and any new vocabulary words that they might not know. So for example, if I were to read this, I might say, the animals all plunged into the wooden boat as they set off into the darkened sea. I wonder if we will get to the land before dawn, Giraffe questioned. The animals all huddled together as the waves crashed onto the boat. So you notice I intentionally use some tier 2 vocabulary. I also use some adjectives and verbs and nouns. And then I might ask them questions about, well, I wonder how the animals are feeling in this particular picture. So this is one way that you could start to read the pages. And again, you allow that time and space for students to add their voice and what they might add as you do your first reading. Once you've had time to really explore the book, then you might want to do some different activities. So I'm going to go through some of these with you today. So looking at that oral and written storytelling, making personal connections with the wordless book, practicing sequencing, retelling, and summarizing of the story. Of course, have to add some games, and then engaging in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And then again, targeting that higher level thinking. So those critical thinking skills. So chat stations, I hope some of you are incorporating this class into your classroom. It's just such a great way to encourage talk time in your classroom. And there are endless ways to incorporate this in your classroom. You don't need to know, I know on here it has the white books. You might have seen these, and they're just like a whiteboard that you would put up on your any wall space. But really you could take chart paper, you can just have a tiny piece of paper. It doesn't have to be anything big, but you could actually have these around the classroom with, for example, some of the pictures of the book. And you could model with sentence frames and word banks by the visuals so that they could go around in groups. And then depending on the ability level of your EALs, they could start with just drawing pictures of what the story might say, or they might write words or sentences. You could also have questions posted by the visuals that again they could do in group ability levels. You could have it where they are sequencing the story at chat stations, or maybe they are adding a descriptive set of sentences. Really, there's so many endless ideas that you could use with chat stations. I do have these linked. There's some templates that you can use in the classroom. Great way for students to get up and moving, and it really takes the pressure away because they are not in front of the whole class. They're in small groups, and if you're putting it by ability level, it makes them feel very comfortable. Another way is building those personal connections. So for example, in this picture, I might say, have you ever had a big dinner with your family? And allow your students to have those conversations together, whether it could be in your chat station or it could be as you're reading through the book as a class. This is another example where you kind of take it from that oral to that written. So maybe you have a Venn diagram where you have the journey and the migrants, and you compare and contrast your journey to the migrants' journey. And again, adding those sentence frames, they could start with building, again, just some words, or it could then go into those sentences and paragraphs. Another fantastic thing to do with wordless picture books is sequencing. So being able to retell that story. So this could begin with just using pictures, and the students actually just place the pictures in order. It could then turn into they're adding words with those pictures and then sentences. So they're actually really retelling the story through the visuals and based on their ability level of those students. Another one you might have heard of that we've talked about is telling tables. So this is a great way to model those cohesive devices first, then, after, lastly. And so they can actually put these in, and then they could start if they are based on their ability level. It could be just with pictures, words, and sentences. So you can see there's a common theme where you can really scaffold a lot of these activities to meet all of your EAL students. Finally, we have to get to the game. So you could play a Who Am I game. So this is really helping to build that descriptive vocabulary. It's modeling sentence structure and cohesive devices. So you provide the sentence frames, I am, I have, I am wearing, who am I? And then the students have to guess who your character is. As we go into our written output, you might have heard of some of our summarizing graphic organizers. I know this is going to go into the chat because there are so many different summarizing frameworks, but I love this one. It's Somebody Wanted But So. It's a really great framework for summarizing the action of a story or a historical event by identifying key elements. So somebody was your character, what was their goal or motivation, but the conflict and what's the resolution. Another one that is really fun to do is building those dialogue or comics with your wordless picture book. So again, you can scaffold this for your EAL student. Finally, one way to look at assessment for your students, and maybe as you've gone through all of these different activities with the wordless picture book, you might end with a FRAIR model. And so this is a great strategy so that students can really add words or pictures, depending on their abilities, to really show what they learned about that particular story. And again, you can change it from using it as a character, or you could have it as a theme of the story. You can kind of accommodate it to what your activities you did. Now, there are some great titles to consider. There are a bunch of them in IMC, and again, they're scaffolded from K to 12 based on that ability level, but I do believe you can use any of the picture books in any of the classrooms because everyone is going to take a different meaning from them. And then finally, just wanted to leave you with some supporting resources. So there is a document that has some activities and takes you through all of the different things that you could do with the wordless picture book. And as well as we have a little choice board that you could use in the classroom with the wordless picture books. So I hope this encourages you to try wordless picture book if you haven't. Please let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear. And again, reach out if you need any more support with this. But without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Rebecca, who's going to be talking about language acquisition in math class.
Hi, thank you so much, Kim. Just as Kim said, we're going to talk about language acquisition in the math class. I wanted to put this slide to start with. You can see here, there's a math question written in Tigrinya. Oftentimes there's a perception that students will do much better in math than in other subjects when they're learning English. And as you can see from this example, I would not be able to start this math question. Even though there's numbers involved, I don't know what the question is asking because I can't read or write in Tigrinya. So wanted to share that first, and also the image of the student with all the knowledge of math in their head. Many of our students have all of that knowledge, they just need support with the language in order to show what they know. So studies have shown that English proficiency significantly impacts math achievement. Students with higher English proficiency tend to perform better in math because they can better understand math problems, but also the math instructions. Factors such as teacher experience, classroom ability, and language accommodations can influence success in math. We will move through the 3 competencies that are targeted on the EAL benchmarks and how these skills can be explicitly taught in math. We're going to start with vocabulary. Your math consultants have created excellent resources to target vocabulary through all the different curricular outcomes. You can see there on the left for elementary, the K-6 new math curriculum vocabulary there is listed by grade. And below you can see an example of vocabulary word card. These documents will be linked in the chat for you and also on the slide deck that we'll share with you tomorrow. You can see on the vocabulary word list, the ones that are blue there, there's a direct link to the word card that goes along with that vocabulary word. These are targeted specifically at the curricular outcomes for elementary, but as you can see there, a lot of those vocabulary words could be used for any grade of math class. Greater than, for example, would be used all throughout math from kindergarten all the way up to math 30. So this resource could be useful for many math classes. And even there, you can see the word magnitude. That's a higher level word that would be used throughout all the grades. So it would be great to pin this resource for yourself if you're teaching math, and know that you have access to pre-made word cards that have the word, the definition, and usually an image that goes along with it. There are some resources that have been created specifically for secondary. There are tiered vocabulary words, word lists for junior high, and I've linked to them there. These ones are excellent. They have the starting at tier 1 all the way up to tier 3 words. So if you have a student in your class who is new to Canada and learning English, they might be beginning with the tier 1 words, and you can see the tier 1 words are listed there. The other document that is linked there is the mathematics directing words, and this is from Alberta Education, and it's directly related to the words that are used on PATs and diplomas. So it's really important that all students, as well as EAL students, have explicit instruction on what these words are and how they're specifically used in math. And you can see the list there is not too extensive. These are all words that you could explicitly teach throughout the year in our secondary classes. Next here, we just have a resource that's available to you. Again, the link for it will be put in the chat, and you can also click on the slide there. This is a vocabulary anchor chart. Oftentimes, our EAL students have difficulty with word problems, just because, as we saw when I began, if you don't understand what the question is asking you, then you won't be able to answer it. This is an anchor chart that talks about the specific math words or math vocabulary that you may find in word problems. And the words are inside of the shape of the operation that you would use for that word. Connecting the word to the operation will help students know which operation to use in order to solve the problem. They could highlight the directing words in the question and then see a visual of what operation would be used. Next, we'll look at sentence structure. Talking about math helps with student understanding, especially with connecting math to real life. Again, your math consultants have created some excellent documents. You can see here the Math Talk sentence starters. If you're talking about math in your class and you're modeling by speaking, using these sentence starters, students will begin to develop that skill, which is great. Also, there's a link to math talks that have been created by the new curriculum team there. These are quick little warm-up activities that can be done at the beginning of math class that really help deepen students' understanding of math. Also wanted to note, when you go to here, there's lots of math talk activities that would be great for older kids too, that are linked on the page, including things like would you rather related to math. So do check that out if you're looking to incorporate more math talk in your class. Next, we'll talk about cohesive devices. Again, there's a link to this document there. This one is the student page. There are many opportunities to practice using cohesive devices in math. I just pulled out a few specific examples. Sequencing, we're always talking about first, last, and next in math. Compare and contrast, similar, different, compared to is always being used, and adding, combined with, and in addition. Again, gaining proficiency in these words is helpful in math, but helpful in all subjects, and increases a student's way to speak academically at school or use it in their writing. So really good bang for your buck targeting the cohesive device skills in math. We'll now look at an example of a math assignment. This is from the Alberta Assessment Consortium. This is a grade 4 assignment, and it's related to playground design. So you can read here what the assignment is. I'll quickly just go over it. Your school has been awarded a new playground structure by the amazing Playground Design Company. Your task is to design this new structure. Your team will design and build an innovative and inclusive playground structure that uses specific angles in its construction. First, you must examine your playground to investigate in estimating, measuring, and naming angles. You will use this information to develop a prototype for the new structure. Once you have built your new structure, testing your prototype by measuring the angles to ensure accuracy before submitting your final design to the company will be crucial. And then you can see here some further instructions to go along with the example. So now that you've seen the question, I'd like you to just take a few minutes to have a look at it, and I've put a copy there of the assignment, and think about what are some barriers that an EAL student in your class, and imagining a grade 4 student, would have that would present a challenge to them being able to access this assignment. Some things to consider would be language, background knowledge, and culture. And if you have any ideas, it would be great if you could share them in the chat. And I'm sure I see that Carrie has put in some sentence frames there to help you frame your ideas for what barriers would be. So again, using sentence frames to model how we want students to be speaking about math is a great tool that we can use to promote using all of the specific things that we're looking for. So I'll give you a few minutes. I mean, maybe less than 1 minute, if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat. So I just added an idea here, and I just said, I think a barrier would be that a student might not know what the word prototype means. So we can see here, you will use this information to develop a prototype for the new structure. A student might see that word and not know what it means, and therefore, might be a barrier to them getting started. Just give it a few more seconds here. Okay, I see Carrie just shared here. I think a barrier would be the amount of words all grouped together. Chunking may help ease the effective filter. Yeah, excellent. This assignment is very, very wordy with no real visuals. So even just seeing all those words would trip up a student possibly. Maybe if we put the instructions more in a step-by-step or in a chart, that would help our students access it. Thank you so much for sharing. And we'll just move on here. And so you can see here, I just went through. Oh, thanks, Maria, for saying adding visuals there. That's great. You can see here, I just went through and highlighted some words that could possibly trip up a student or prevent them from getting started. Awarded, structure, task, angles. The more specific math words here that they might need some explicit instruction for: protractor, acute, right, obtuse, straight angles. And then even at the bottom here, comparing them to the benchmarks. That's quite a higher level word that students would need some explicit help accessing. You can see here the barriers on the side are listed as the vocabulary, academic, subject specific, background knowledge. Has the student used a protractor before? Being new to Canada, maybe they haven't used that tool before. They would possibly need some explicit instruction on that before starting. And then cultural knowledge. Were playgrounds the same in the student's home country? Do they know what a regular playground looks like? Are we looking for specific to Canada playgrounds, or could students use something different from their home country? And then the opportunity here would be to visit the school playground to connect to real life and share their learning in a variety of ways. Some scaffolds or differentiation that could be used would be visuals, which we had spoken about, some sentence frames, and also some modeling. And so quickly, we'll just talk about some ways to remove barriers. And I will let you know that I took this assignment and put it into AI and got AI to help me get started with some of these scaffolds. So the first one would be to simplify instructions. You can see here the simplified instructions would be much easier to follow than the big texty paragraph that we initially saw. So look at the playground, make a model, build it, check angles, and submit your design. Again, much easier to understand. And then a second thing you could do to remove barriers would be to give definitions of key terms. So the key terms that were listed in the assignment are defined here in a simple way. And then the last one was to provide a visual for key terms. So you can see here the different angles are shown visually so that the students could connect to it. There's lots more things that you could do, but I just wanted to do one example here, just as a way to show you that our EAL students and all students in our class benefit from some supports to help barriers be removed so that they can access content in their math class. And just as we finish off here, important to note that the content and language objectives that we see here, we wear two hats. We're always trying to meet the needs of both. Activities that can help you target curricular outcomes and benchmark outcomes hits, two birds with one stone here. So hopefully you took from our presentation today how you can incorporate language objectives through wordless picture books in literacy, and then also some specific ways you can target language in your math classes. And wanted to share a few upcoming PGs that we have on March 7th. It's the District PG Day, and we're offering here at St. John's Center for Arts and Culture and a PG carousel. We'll have 2 time blocks from 1 to 1:45 and then from 1:45 to 2:15. And the 4 sessions that are being offered are using wordless picture books to support EALs. So being able to dive further into wordless picture books, read work session, the power of PWIM, and effective use of translation in English language learning. And if any of you are interested in receiving the EAL newsletter each month, it just gets sent out to you at the beginning of each month, and we highlight some strategies, important things coming up. We look at a country and share some information about it, and resources are shared on there as well. So you can just scan the QR code and join the list if you're interested. And we're at the end. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining on this beautiful day. We'll turn our cameras and mics on in case you have any questions.